So our reading this morning comes from a part of the Bible I don't often delve into, but this particular reading I think is worth it. It's from the 12th chapter of Paul's letter to the church in Rome, verses 9 to 21. He writes, "Let love be genuine. Hate what is evil, hold fast to what is good. Love one another with mutual affection. Outdo one another in showing honor. Do not lag in zeal, be ardent in spirit, serve the Lord. Rejoice in hope, be patient in suffering, persevere in prayer. Contribute to the needs of the saints, extend hospitality to strangers. Bless those who persecute you, bless and do not curse them. Rejoice with those who rejoice, weep with those who weep. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be haughty, but associate with the lowly. Do not claim to be wiser than you are. Do not repay anyone evil for evil, but take thought for what is noble in the sight of all. If it is possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave room for the wrath of God, for it is written, 'Vengeance is mine, I will repay,' says the Lord." No. And notice this part is in quotation marks here. Paul is quoting directly from Proverbs 25. "No, if your enemies are hungry, feed them. If they are thirsty, give them something to drink, for by doing this you will heap burning coals on their heads." That's the end of the quote from Proverbs. "Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good." Thus ends our reading, and may God add a blessing of understanding to the hearing of this word. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm exhausted just listening to the list of all these things that we're supposed to do that Paul has got lined up for us. I mean, it's still summer. It's my first Sunday back. I mean, can't we ease into things a little bit, you know? It's Labor Day weekend, the Labor Day Classic. How are we going to bless those people from Winnipeg? But Paul has no patience. He doesn't care if it's Labor Day weekend or not. He feels a real urgency about what it is he's got to say. Has no patience for wanting to take the summer off or anything. So what's going on here in Paul's letter to the Romans is he has spent the first 11 chapters talking about how to become a Christian. And it's brilliant, brilliant stuff. He explains, for example, how it is that God's grace is extended to all people, not just to Jews, but also to Gentiles. Not just to free, but also to slave. Not just to men, but also to women. To all people. His explanation in chapter 4 that God's grace is freely given and does not have to be earned and cannot be mediated by anyone is the spark that ignited the Protestant Reformation. It's immensely important theology, and it's brilliantly laid out. That's the first 11 chapters. This is chapter 12. Starting in chapter 12, the last 5 chapters of the book of Romans, Paul wants to turn from talking about becoming a Christian to talking about being one. Do you see the difference? When I was in my 20s, I went for a while to a church where every Sunday the preacher told us how to get saved. Every single Sunday. And after some months of this, I went to him and I said, "I got that part. It really wasn't that complicated the way he explained it. I feel okay about that. What I really need to know is how can I live as a person of faith in my community? I really need to know how I can be a Christian in the world today." And he got all huffy and said, "No one's going to talk me out of preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ." I kind of thought, well, I actually wanted you to start, but I was young. We didn't go to that church very much longer. Sometimes but that's the difference, you see, between becoming a Christian and being one. How to live it out. Often when there's a weekend retreat or something, especially with young people, I've seen it done lots of times with adults as well, The weekend retreat begins with establishing what is called in church circles a behavioral covenant. And that's when you say to the kids, okay, so what are the rules for how we're going to be together this weekend on this retreat? And they go, rules? I don't know. And they look at each other and they look at the floor. And finally, some kid in the back says, no drama. Or doing away with drama. A boy would say that, no drama. And finally, some kid will say, well, we should listen to each other respectfully. That sounds good. And another kid, well, we should show up on time for stuff. And another kid, we should listen to the leaders. And we shouldn't leave the grounds without asking permission. And, and after a little while, the kids are great. And they put together a really good covenant, a covenant about behavior, about how they're going to be together that weekend. And of course, inevitably, a day later, they have to be reminded that they promised not to do that. No name calling is usually one of them. The Apostle Paul is establishing for us in this reading a behavioral covenant for us as Christians. But he's not going to let us work it out for ourselves. Oh no, because it's Paul. Now those of you who have a positive view of the Apostle Paul, who want to give him a break, will say that, well, it's because of his sense of urgency. He really wants to get this across, and he doesn't feel like he's got a lot. It's too important to let us take the time to work it out for ourselves. Those of you who have given up trying to find something positive to say about Paul, and you are many, say he is simply too hierarchical, too patriarchal to bother to treat us like even teenagers. He treats us like children and tells us what our behavioral covenant is. And I don't think Paul would disagree with me about that. Regardless how you feel about Paul, the man was brilliant. And so it's worth at least considering what it is he's got to say. And this is what he does say. He says, let love be genuine. Well, that's good advice. Actually, in the original language, what he literally says is, let love be unhypocritical. And I like that even better. We all know what hypocrisy is. It's talking the talk without walking the walk. And Paul knows very well those church people who talk about love, but don't let it change how they feel about those people, whoever those people might be. Maybe they're the poor, or maybe they're, maybe they're the gays, or maybe whatever, those people. But for Paul, a spiritual life is a lived life, a life of thoughts and actions, a life of word and deed, a life where body and spirit are one, where our actions are congruent with what we say our faith means to us. A life in which love is lived out and not simply talked about. And all of this long list of behaviors in which it can be seen in the same way. They're about living out our faith. They're about living a life of integrity. Still, this is Paul. And sometimes the way he talks can be a bit grating on modern ears. He says, outdo one another in showing honor. It just seems to me that treating honor as a competition, where we try and outdo, it doesn't seem very honorable to me. A better translation, the one that is used by many scholars, is share the lead in showing respect. It's a little more collaborative than it is competitive. I like that a little bit better. Share the lead in showing respect. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Weep with those who weep. That's the basis of all pastoral care. Live in harmony with each other. Do not be haughty, but associate with the lowly, yes? If we were to establish our own behavioral covenant, I think it would sound a lot like this. Do not claim to be wiser than you are. I really believe that this one is aimed directly at preachers. You people give me a microphone and allow me to share my wisdom with you every week for as long as I want, as long as it's less than 15 minutes. And I think that for myself and for a lot of preachers and a lot of people, I run out of my own wisdom pretty quickly. And so there's a great temptation among preachers to claim to be wiser than we are. And Paul himself was a preacher. I think he knew this temptation very well. Now, some of these instructions for faithful living are pretty straightforward. Love one another with mutual affection, of course. Extend hospitality to strangers, yes. So far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. Great stuff. Others of these instructions seem designed to challenge our assumptions and stretch our spirits. Bless those who persecute you. Bless them and do not curse them. There's a challenge. So the next time someone cuts you off in traffic or is rude to you in a store, first of all, keep all your fingers to yourself. And then say, God bless you. And mean it. Let your love be genuine and unhypocritical. That's a challenge. Some of what Paul's got to say, I don't even understand. If your enemies are hungry, feed them. If they are thirsty, give them something to drink. How do you feed the Taliban? How do you give the Islamic State, ISIS, how do you give them something to drink? Now, I know that hate will never put an end to hate and that violence will never end violence, but I don't know how to put something different into action. This is one of those times when I am not going to claim to have more wisdom than I actually do. I don't know. Someone else, someone of the stature of Gandhi or Martin Luther King Jr., is going to have to give us a new direction here. But still, I like Paul's approach, his practical approach. Do good to your enemies, he says. Why? Because Christians have to be doormats all the time? No. Because we always have to be nicey nice people? No. Because, he says, because doing good to your enemies will heap burning coals on their head. See, it's not very nice, is it? Hate will never overcome hate, but maybe if we can show the whole world what a jerk that person is being, that person will see it themselves. And they'll be embarrassed. That's the heap of burning coals. They'll be so embarrassed that they'll do something different the next time. And in this way, says Paul, we may indeed be able to overcome evil with good. Now for me, all of this, the straightforward parts and the challenging parts and even the parts I don't understand, all of it is wrapped up in the phrase, hold fast to what is good. Hold fast to what is good. Now we all know what is good and what isn't. Don't let go of what is good so that you can reach for something different, something that's not good. Don't let go of what is good so you can reach for more money or that promotion you're looking for or getting ahead in the world somehow. Don't do it by letting go of what is good. You know, if you see someone drop a $20 bill on the street, don't let go of good for the sake of $20. Pick it up and give it back to them. Hold fast to what is good. I'm reminded of a story of a young person from rural Saskatchewan who goes off into the world to make his fortune. And he goes to Toronto, takes the train to Toronto, and he gets off the train at Union Station in downtown Toronto. He's got everything he owns and 2 suitcases, and he walks out onto King Street there, and there's the CN Tower right in front of him. He sets his suitcases down and looks way up at it. And then over here he sees all these shining skyscrapers in the business district on Bay Street. Oh, he says. But he's not overwhelmed. He says, I'm going to conquer this town. And then he looks down and the suitcases are gone. There's lots of time in sermons I talk about letting go of fear and letting go of hurt. But there's a time to hang on too. Hold fast to the goodness that is within you. Hold fast to that goodness the way a drowning person holds fast to a life ring. Hold fast. Let me close by telling you about a kid in my neighborhood. Kid got a job at the grocery store because his older brother had a job at the grocery store and had done a good job there. So he got a job at the grocery store too, and he hadn't been there for too long when he saw somebody stealing groceries, taking food off the shelf and putting it in their coat. Well, what do? What the kid in my neighborhood did was he went over and he spoke to that person. He said, "Come with me." And he took him to the checkout and he paid for those groceries. It was about $10. And then he took the kid, the shopping bag, took him to the door and said to him, "You don't have to do this. You can do something different. You don't have to go down this road." And he sent him on his way. Now, I don't know if that's ever going to make a difference to that person, or if it's going to make a difference later on to that person. But I do know that the kid from my neighborhood held fast to goodness. And we can do the same. Thanks be to God.